This case takes place in London, England, on the 28th of November, 2014. Sarah Sands was a 32-year-old single mother of 3 from London. She had been on a waiting list for a council property for a number of years. From what I can tell, the 4 had a somewhat turbulent past. But 2014 was the year that her family would be given a flat in Silvertown, East London. Sarah, along with her eldest Bradley, aged 12, and her 2 twins, Alfie and Reese, both 11, now had a chance at a fresh start. Things were going well in the beginning. Sarah said that her children were settling in well at school and seemed to be enjoying their new life. Things were looking good and everybody was happy. Opposite the block of flats where the family lived is another block of flats. Inside there lived a 77-year-old man named Michael Pleasted, or at least, that's what he told people his name was. Michael presented himself as a sweet, lonely and vulnerable old man who would sell the newspapers at the local newsagent shop. Everyone in the area seemed to get along with Michael very well. Locals who knew him would often stop and speak with him. Shortly after moving in, Sarah met Michael, and the two developed quite the bond. At the time, Sarah would have described Michael as just a nice and friendly old man. The two would often chat with each other, and she would, on occasion, even cook him meals and bring them over to his flat. If Michael needed anything, Sarah was always happy to help, and she would often keep him company. As Sarah's son Bradley was at this point 12 years old, he was looking for some weekend work that was suitable for his age, just so he would be able to earn a few quid. And by chance, Michael asked Sarah if her son Bradley would be interested in helping him at the newsagents. Sarah trusted Michael and considered him to be a good friend. She had no issues with Michael asking this, and many other young boys in the community had also helped Michael for some extra pocket money. She asked her son if he would be interested. Bradley was incredibly excited and jumped at the chance to earn himself some extra money. Soon enough, Bradley was at the shops helping to sort the papers, and on a couple of occasions he also brought along with him his twin brothers. Although, not long after starting, Bradley told Sarah that he no longer wished to do any more work for Michael, and the despicable reason why would soon come out. In November of 2014, Sarah's twins broke down and told her every parent's worst nightmare. They told her that after helping Michael sort some of the papers, he invited them back to his flat. Because Michael had built up trust with the boys, they agreed, and they went back to his home with him. Once there, Michael essayed the 2 boys. Bradley then found out that his 2 brothers had been groomed by Michael. Sarah found Bradley in his room, crying uncontrollably, shaking, and pulling his hair out. He told his mother that he too had been abused by Michael, but was too scared and ashamed to admit anything. Bradley kept saying, "I should have told you before." Michael had befriended Sarah to gain her trust and to get closer to her children. From day one, this had been his plan. Sarah sat with her boys all night as they explained that they had been groomed and abused by Michael. Sarah would later say that the level of guilt she felt consumed her. She said that it was her main job to protect her children, and she felt that she had massively failed them. Sarah immediately contacted the police. She and her boys explained everything to the investigators, and Michael was swiftly arrested. This pretty much should have been the end of the story, but unfortunately it isn't. Shortly after being apprehended by the police, Michael pleaded not guilty and was released on bail. But not only released, he was allowed to move back into his apartment right across the road from where Sarah and her 3 boys lived. Her children were terrified. They were scared that Michael may seek revenge, and if they left the flat, bumping into him was a real possibility. Sarah, of course, was absolutely furious and went right to the police station. She pleaded and begged for the authorities to re-arrest Michael. However, they refused and instead advised her to move. No longer feeling safe in their home, Sarah took herself and her 3 boys to her mother's house, and the 4 lived there for a number of days. Sarah then contacted the local council and asked them to move Michael. They too said there was nothing they could do. They said they could rehome Sarah and the boys, but it would be away from London. And worse yet, because Michael had pleaded not guilty, the 3 boys would have to attend the trial and give evidence against him. A horrifying prospect for any victim of such a crime, but especially for children. Sarah felt that nobody was listening to her, and felt a great injustice that Michael was freely allowed to roam the streets. A few days later, on the 28th of November, Sarah drank 2 bottles of wine and made her way from her mother's house back to her flat alone. Back in her flat, she looked at photographs of her 3 boys and began to weep. The shame she felt due to her boys being abused under her care became too much. Sarah got up, walked into her kitchen, and grabbed a 12-inch knife. She then left her block of flats and walked over to the opposite block where Michael lived. She stood outside, knocked, and waited for him to answer. Michael came to the door and the 2 began speaking. Sarah demanded that he do the right thing and confess to the crimes he had committed so her children would not have to relive their trauma in court. Michael pushed back and stated that her children were lying and that he had done no such thing. Not convinced, Sarah stared blankly at him, and this is when Michael's personality shifted. Realizing that Sarah didn't believe him, he became cocky, abrupt, and began to smirk. He showed no remorse for the pain he had caused her children. Sarah later stated that she didn't recognize the man who she had previously seen as her friend. He refused to listen and refused to admit what he had done. Sarah then pulled out the 12-inch knife. Michael panicked and rushed towards her. Sarah then plunged the knife into Michael again and again. She stabbed Michael a total of 8 times and then quickly left the scene. In the CCTV footage, Sarah can be seen fleeing from the scene with the knife in her hand. Michael lay in his flat alone and slowly bled to death. An hour after attacking Michael, Sarah turned herself in to the police. She explained the situation to them and stated that she had lost all control. She claimed that she didn't intend to actually kill Michael, she only wanted to make him confess to the crimes. Sarah was arrested and charged with murder, and her children were put into the care of their grandparents. Following the killing, it was found that Michael wasn't even his real name. His real name was Robin Malt, although to keep things simple, I shall keep referring to him as Michael. Under his old name, Michael had multiple convictions for SAing young boys from 1970 to 1991, a shocking total of 24 previous convictions. He served sentences of between 9 and 6 years for his crimes. And here is where the case becomes even more disgusting than it already is. A legal loophole in the United Kingdom allows registered offenders to change their name and get a new driving license and passport, which means they can pass a criminal record check. This gave Michael the chance to evade the authorities, allowing him to get closer to children once more. Nobody knew of Michael's past because he had changed his name, and because his crimes predated the sex offenders register. The flat that Michael had been living in was given to him by the council. The flat was overlooking a primary school. It then emerged in the media that hundreds of offenders had changed their names and never told the authorities, meaning that many were working with children and had passed a criminal check. The trial began in September of 2015. The evidence was presented to the court, and Sarah explained her situation and how she lost control and acted as a mother who only wanted to protect her children. The judge overlooking the case stated that Sarah's case was truly exceptional and took into account the horrific acts Michael had committed and the fact that he was allowed back into his flat. Sarah was convicted of manslaughter by reason of loss of control and not murder. She was sentenced to 3.5 years. However, some people were under the opinion that this sentence was far too lenient, and an appeal to extend her sentence was lodged. The reason for extending Sarah's sentence were as follows. She wore clothing to hide her identity in the CCTV and tried to not leave any fingerprints, which showed signs of premeditation. And after stabbing Michael, she fled from the scene and did not call for any medical aid. For these reasons, Sarah's sentence was doubled to 7 years. As of today, Sarah is now free. She served 4 years of her 7-year sentence and was released in August of 2018. Many in the local area praised Sarah for what she did, and many people sent her letters in prison telling her that she was a hero for what she did, and that they would have done the same if they were in her position. Others believe that her sentence was valid, and that she should have let the courts do their job. After Sarah was freed from prison, her children waived their right to anonymity so they could speak out and defend their mother. They said that Michael's death brought them some relief, knowing that he could no longer harm anyone ever again. Since being released, Sarah has given a number of interviews to ensure people know her full side of the story. In one interview she said, "I never dreamt I'd be capable. I have no pride in killing him, but at least I know he can't hurt anyone else. I'm not a bad person, but I know I did do a bad thing. I've never denied that I should have been punished. I'd never kill again, and I don't see myself as a murderer. But I don't regret what I did. I was a mother, desperate to protect my children."